out in September. Yeah, so in this script, which I wrote 4.5 years ago, really was a game changer for my career because I had sold a bunch of stuff that never did anything. This one was on, Hollywood puts out these stupid lists every year, but this was one of the top scripts a few years ago. I got a lot of work after that. I've been adapting a lot of books for studios and sold a few other original scripts and a few TV shows, so all because of this movie. So it's great that it actually came about, and there's long stories about how it happened.
Was this your first original script, or do you have more in your drawer?
This, I think, was my 10th script. The one that was just produced, I wrote right before this. So there's still plenty sitting in the drawer. Many are horrible. And there's a couple that I still love and am passionate about that I'd like to see made at some point.
It's a tough life, being a writer.
It is, but it's when it starts clicking, it's great because you can live anywhere and you get to see legends like Christopher Plummer say your words, which is fantastic.
This was not an adaptation of a book or a short story. It was completely original in your head.
Completely original. After I wrote it, there were a few true life stories in America that sort of reflected what happened in this movie. A few Nazis that were living under aliases, and there's a book that came out a year or two ago by a New York Times writer called The Nazis Next Door that talks about a program we had where the United States actually brought over 10,000 Nazis, including a lot of people who were really key in the concentration camps, and we gave them all new lives starting in America, and most, they were supposed to help us with the Cold War. Most did nothing for us, and they just got to start over again in America.
Some scientists helped the U.S. a lot, I think. There's always a debate in Hollywood and among film critics, is movies primarily a writer's medium or a director's medium? And my question is, how much of your original script was changed by the director in this case?
Well, Adam McGoyan, this is his 15th movie. He wrote 13 of them. So he had extreme respect for the script, and he didn't change anything himself. The only thing that changed was adding the scene in Canada. So I wrote the border crossing scene, and then when he goes to the second person, the homosexual, that takes place in Canada, and the reason that happened is because the film was financed by Canada. And to get that money, there had to be a certain amount of scenes taking place in Canada. And really my only complaint about the movie, when you go through the Canadian financing system, is you have to use all Canadian extras. And to me, some of the minor performances in it kind of just rubbed me the wrong way. I've also seen it 100 times, so I think I'm
disagree. I thought the minor characters and the background characters were excellent. The kids and the nurses, I thought, were very well cast.
The kids are great. Well, the first kid is like he had like a publicist on set. He had like agent manager, and he's like a full-time show kid. But yeah, I love the last girl, and this is a great Agoyan tidbit. The girl who reads the letter, he never gave her the letter until the scene when they're filming. And so when she's actually reading it, she's having troubles with these words. And that was Adam's idea going into it. And she was so self-conscious about it, she broke down and started crying and had to leave the scene. But it ended up being, I think, a great performance on her part, getting those words out.
And the film was shot mostly where?
All in Canada. In and outside of Toronto for 4 weeks, which I was on set for that, and then 3 weeks in the Sioux, which they have extra tax breaks, and yeah, that's all the beautiful scenes that take place in the Sioux.
But a lot of directors don't want the writer to be on the set, but obviously you got along very well and contributed along the way. Were you consulted? Were you asked to change things as they went along?
I mean, there really were very little changes. And when I was on set, I was useless. I think I spoke up like twice about just some continuity errors I saw. To me, I asked to go. I wanted to be an observer, and Adam was great. He said, come the whole time, and I was living in Vietnam, so, and I've got a wife and a kid, so I was like, I'm not going to come for 7 weeks, so I went for a month. I will say the one thing I fought for to keep in the movie was the piano playing, which they were going to cut from the script for whatever reason, and I just thought it made really nice transitions. And that is Christopher Plummer playing the piano. He's a phenomenal pianist, and so much so that he didn't like the sound of the pianos on set, so we had to re-record the music at a studio in Toronto while up there.
I kept looking for the digital trick, actually, because we had another movie we showed a while back called Tokyo Sonata, where there's a teenage boy playing the piano, and they actually cut his hands off and digitally put in the hands of a pianist, so it looked like he was playing, but this was real.
That's him, and the actual piano playing on the soundtrack is Adam Levoine's sister, who is a pianist.
So it was a very tight production, right? There wasn't much left on the cutting room floor, or was there?
Nothing really. There was one scene that they took out at the beginning, and this is one of my minor complaints of the film. It made it seem Christopher Plummer escapes the place really easily. And there was actually a setup by Martin Landau where he had called the security guard to his room. And that's why that chair was empty. But their concern was they wanted to get into the action much quicker, and there's not too many thrillers with 90-year-old men, and they thought people would lose interest right away unless it was quickly paced.
There must be some comments or questions from you guys. We've got 2 microphones.
I just want to say that I saw Christopher Plummer in Sound of Music, and many other movies. In particular, I liked him in Silent Partner, a Canadian movie. But to see the change over that period of years is incredible. He still has his hair, very much, and I'd like to be interested to hear how he was and how he behaved on the set.
Well, Christopher's incredible. I mean, he's in amazing shape. Mentally, he's in amazing shape. He was actually supposed to be naked in a scene, and he's just said, "No one's going to believe I'm 9 years old when they see my body." It's kind of ripped. And an anecdote about him: when he gets thrown down by Dean Norris in that scene, we had a stuntman ready for it because he gets pushed multiple times, and he's 86 in real life.
That's the policeman. When the
policeman pushes him down, and we were concerned if he could get hurt, and if he got hurt, broke a hip or something, we weren't going to finish production. And he insisted that he do it. I'm a professional actor. I know how to take falls. But Egoyan brought in the stunt guy at lunchtime to kind of sneak it around Christopher Plummer. And Plummer just had this sixth sense, and we broke for lunch, and he was going around set, and Christopher just stopped and kind of walked back and saw this guy dressed up just like him with his hair, and it was his only time he threw like a celebrity, I wouldn't say hissy fit, but he said, "That guy's not doing this. This is my role. He's not taking this part." And he did it, and to his credit, it's a better shot because they were going to do it from behind, so you just see his head coming back, and now you have the front shot of Plummer actually going down. But he's an incredible guy. He doesn't like talking about that movie that everybody... That's the one movie he doesn't like talking about. And Landau is also incredible. Sound of Music is not one of his favorite things to talk about. But Landau is also incredible, and he's just got 1,000 stories. He's much more talkative than Plummer.
Bob.
Question, just another comment. I wanted to know what was going on in your mind in terms of how you came up with the script, what your history, or how you conceived it, how you came up with the theme, how you put this together, what drove it? You can give us your inspiration, your life story about that, just something that puts it together in terms of, for all us to feel personal. What was the passion? There was a lot of passion in that movie.
A lot of passion, yeah. I mean, I'm Jewish. I consider myself an atheist, but I grew up in a Jewish town, and a lot of my friends' grandparents were survivors. I went to Hebrew school when I was a kid. A lot of my teachers were survivors, and I grew up seeing tattoos on people's arm. My family had no survivors. And it always occurred to me that so many people got away with this, and I wondered what kind of lives they were living. Were they living in fear, looking over their shoulder every single day, that they were about to be caught, about to be recognized? Or were they going to bed every night with a smile on their face, thinking they got away with it? And the idea to me is that at this point in these people's lives, and there are still trials going on, there's a trial, I think it just finished last week in Germany, with the guy being sentenced, that the worst thing that could happen to these people is not being killed. It's just the truth getting out there, and especially if they haven't told their families what they did, and their families finding out these atrocious acts that they had done. So that was really the starting point. I also wanted to write a movie starring older actors. I just felt that there's all this talk in Hollywood about who gets roles, but there is an ageism, and there's not that many movies, or any movies, dramas really made with actors of this age. And that is literally the thing people said to me. This wasn't made in Hollywood, it was made in Canada, and the script got me a ton of work. People loved the script, but nobody wanted to make a movie in Hollywood. Everyone just said, we don't make movies starring old men, we can't get insurance. Literally can't get insurance to make this movie to cover the actors. And when we eventually got the script into Robert Lantos, who's this legendary Canadian producer, in his hands, he just had no problem with it. He called Christopher Plummer right away and said, if Christopher will do the movie, I'll do it. So really, it was equally passionate. I wanted to make a movie starring older actors. Memento, to me, is a big influence on this. That's one of my favorite movies. And yeah, and thankfully it got made, and I'm proud of the way it turned out.
Hello, I'd like to ask you about other topics of your scripts. Which topics are you interested in?
Well, my next one is, which I wrote before this when I was still technically a comedy writer, is a very political movie. Bruce Dern is in it. Eric Stoltz, if you know the actor, directed it. It's his feature. He's a huge TV director. It's his first feature. And it's about a 18-year-old kid who runs for Board of Education in this town. And it's got a lot of political commentary in it. Since this, I've now been doing a lot of fictional book adaptations. I did a book at Warner Brothers right now called Wings of War. It's about war in Afghanistan. There's a Japanese book I adapted called The Thief that I love. I think it'd be a great book. And I just started my first nonfiction, which I was telling Jared earlier is a very different pressure, being a true story. It's a book called $1 Billion Spy. It was on the New York Times bestseller list this year by David Hoffman, who's a Washington Post reporter who won the Pulitzer for The Dead Hand a while back. It's very Argo-esque in that it's declassified CIA files, and he spent years trying to get them declassified about truly America's greatest spy we ever had during the Cold War, this Russian who was not in the government, not a military guy, but he happened to work at this military radar factory. He had given the United States over a decade all of Russia's radar systems, which kind of gave Reagan the confidence to push harder because we knew we could defeat all their planes. And once we had those systems, it's crazy. When American fighters have fought MiGs in the Iraq War and other wars, they're like 66-0. They've never been taken down once since we've taken these radar systems. But it's a true story. I was just in D.C. a few weeks ago meeting all these CIA agents from the 80s, and there's now like a pressure, because it is a true story, but we have to fictionalize some things to be able to fit 10 years of spying into a 120-page script. If I had my preference, it would have been a television show, but we couldn't sell it as a TV show.
So the Russians knew that the U.S. knew
the Russians didn't know for a decade. Once they caught him, they knew.